Crazy. The one that
And
gets
we
me
are
is
live.
And we're
We
live.
are on the internet.
Live.
Hello,
That seems like
everyone.
an excellent Geico commercial.
From the get-go, yeah.
Like
from the
From the
get-go.
get-go.
Like, you know, they get in a
We
crash.
were
Like,
good from the get-go.
don't worry, I've been protected, you know, since the get-go. And they're like, you mean the get-go?
patent
And he's like,
pending,
no,
patent pending.
the get-go.
No, I don't.
Yeah, that is TM, trademark.
TM,
Yeah,
TM.
It's like,
Geico.
you can't steal this.
You
You can't
can't
steal
use
this.
that
I already
unless
wrote
you
it
pay
down.
us
I already
money,
wrote it
yeah.
down.
It's on the page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Screen. And we have a wonderful guest here today. Bam, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, what's up, dudes? I'm people call me Bam. My name is Brandon Al McClanahan. I am the dungeon master for Weednd D, Weednd D&D. It depends on how you want to say it, but really it's Weednd D&D. A cannabis positive actual play featuring performers from on and around the Las Vegas Strip. So that's like my DM cred. I've been playing D&D since I was probably about 7 years old. I'm an actor out here in wonderful Las Vegas. I am a wizard for a living, which is fun. I play the evil-fired wizard Mordred in Tournament of the Kings. So yeah, I mean, at that point, anything more than that would seem.
I gotta ask, nerdy parents, nerdy older sibling, or were you just one precocious motherfucker, cool librarian? How did you get in at 7?
Nerdy older sibling, yes. My dad is like wicked cool. He builds black powder rifles and does like mountain man recreations called Rendezvous.
Awesome.
And so yeah, I shot black powder growing up till I was about 14, like competitively and stuff. It was a weird little mix. But yeah, no, my older brother Jeremy, he's about 10 years older than me, so he was about 17. Him and the homies, we all called him the crew, would come and play D&D and Magic at this table, while me and my best friends, who were like all their little brothers, and we were called the Bucky crew. The Bucky crew would just like watch, and then like we played a lot of Final Fantasy, so we had watched them play D&D and we played Final Fantasy, and then we made up this like D&D Final Fantasy. It was like D&D, but we all had 909,909 hit points, and you know, had like the like stat. We were all based. All our characters were named like Killer and Viper, and then we eventually like started like reading the books and actually doing it right, and man, fell in love with it. So I actually started playing with those guys. Those exact dudes that I started playing when I was 7 years old with. We're all in different states and stuff, but through Roll20, we were able to get a campaign. We just ended a 2.5-year campaign, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
First to
My
20th level.
My dad wasn't a black powder professional, but he quite unwisely taught my brother and I how to make it.
Oh, there you go.
Like how to make like crude black powder.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a good idea, because this is like my older brother who like would shoot arrows at me after my dad taught us how to make bows and arrows, and he like nailed a nail into the end of one. It was like, we're gonna play a game called Run Forest Run, and I was Forest, and and this is the child that
Australia.
my father decided to teach how to make
Australia.
explosives with. So yeah, it's yeah.
Well, I feel like a lot of us could swap younger brother battle scars all night, but we are here to talk about being a DM and DM technique. And so I think the first and most obvious question that we would love to know.
Before we dive straight into things, because I love your enthusiasm, Sean, but we have a couple of housekeeping things to take care of. We have a couple of announcements. Sean is just so ready to get in. We have an intro, we have some announcements. So first off, the announcements. Top of the announcements, we just want to acknowledge Remembrance Day and Veterans Day in the US, acknowledging all those people that laid down their lives to fight against tyranny and whatnot. Yeah, so all the love and respect goes out to that. We want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors, Legend Craft. Go check out their Instagram for their magnet tracker pre-sales with veneers that you won't be able to get during the Kickstarter. Enter the code Blackwater at checkout for a 5% discount. Also, Silver Wing Armory. Their pre-orders for their partnership with Grimbeard Leather are shipping soon, so go check that out. Enter again the code Blackwater, one word, Blackwater, at the checkout for 10% off. We also want to do a huge thank you to our art partners, Keisha from Fairy Dragon Dice and Tiana, our campaign artist. Twitch gaming and subscriptions. Thank you everyone who subscribes. That's awesome. If you subscribe using your Twitch Prime or Prime Gaming or whatever it's called these days, I've lost track. please try and make sure that those are re-upped, because they don't roll over every month. So you have to do that manually. It's an unfortunate part of things, but you know what? If you love the show, we appreciate you. So,
if you
Saturday.
love us,
you'll do the work. You know, if you love us, you'll. That.
No, guys, if you love us, though, you'll buy us things.
No,
I'm just thinking of the character from
How do I mute
Parks and Rec. Money, please. Money.
They are tremendous, very cool products. I especially suggest you go look at the Legend Craft Magna Tracker that they're coming out with, which is
cool stuff.
one of the most sort of simple but effective ways to track your HP if you are not a computer D&D person like myself and a handful of our other players who love playing on paper. But I have had the same character sheet for like, I don't know, 3 years now, something like that. Tim, how long have we been playing? And the spot where I write in and erase my hit points is worn entirely through. So that's a problem. I've actually had to move the hitbox spot over. But anyway, they're great products.
This is the nature of this show.
Don't buy them
that was
because
a great
you love
segue.
us.
Well, we're talking about subscribing, Matthew. Subscribe to us if you love us.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Buy the products just because they're awesome.
Yeah.
On Saturday, our regular campaign will be playing with a very special guest from last week, Chris Solo from our awesome friends over at Fabled 42. He will be joining us as Limerick. So come hang out, have a good time. And we'll be dropping some very exciting news about some upcoming streams and some things that we have in the works. So you'll want to stop by and catch the tea. I think that's everything. Does anyone else that can think of anything that needs to be announced? We got a thumbs up. Everything is covered. I think before we get into it, before we get really deep into the nitty gritty of doing DM stuff and why being a DM is exciting and fun, let's roll that intro.
Oh yeah, Bam, we didn't tell you, but you gotta turn off your video and your audio. And
well,
then
just your video, technically.
Yeah,
you
can't talk through the intro. That's
you can still, well, you can if you want.
Sean,
I mean,
it's one of Sean's favorite things.
It's a bit of a faux pas, but I think it's fun.
Oh no, now my video.
Sorry, bro. We all make mistakes.
What a fucking mess.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah,
what a smooth transition to that sweet intro.
Yeah.
All right, so
what a way to let everyone know we're professionals.
With a seamless transition, because we are adamant professionals. Sean, what was your question?
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, yeah. It's the starter. You do Weednd D&D.
I do.
You've been playing D&D forever. What are the fucking challenges of running a game of D&D where you and everyone at the table presumably is fucking ripped?
No, it's a valid question. So one of the things that we're trying to do with Weednd D&D is just kind of take away a little of the stigma that comes around with marijuana consumption. It's funny being a part of D&D communities online and stuff. That was something I noticed a lot of. It was like, no, you couldn't possibly DM while you're high, because what would you do? Just like stare at your shoes, or, and there's a little bit of an insult built into that I took personally enough to build this show as like a fuck you to those people.
That's how you make Twitch shows.
Yeah, that's how you do it. And but so for us, it kind of helps with the immersion. So I try as a DM to help by it's funny. I'll show you right here. I have a card here that I constantly keep with me that says the 5 senses, and it's just got the 5 senses. And it's because when you are stoned, contrary to popular belief, your senses are heightened. And if you're immersed, then playing toward in your storytelling, allowing them to get into that headspace and feel through their senses, they tend to get a little deeper into the story. And I'm lucky enough, especially with my cast, they're all actors. So it's like if they a little bit, just like a little bit of booze helps some people dance. It's like for a lot of actors that, that I work with particularly, it's like, you smoke a little bit just to kind of loosen yourself up and accept your whatever your given conditions are. And so it's like, I don't find we fight too much against like the things you think might be the problem. Like we don't snack all the time, and it's like people tend to remember things. I try as a DM to like do them a favor, and if something's important and we're all a little high and we're joking around and maybe something gets glossed over, I'll revisit it with another NPC or another point because it's like that's not they didn't fail, like they were succeeding, everybody was having a really good time, and so maybe the some of the details that I was trying to hit in those points didn't get hit. So it's not. So I'm like, okay, well, perfect. Then I have 5,000 other people I can pull and give them that information. So I would say I reiterate some of the more important themes in my stories a little bit more for a stoner that might have lost their way. But yeah, for the most part, man, that's kind of why I like doing the show the way I do is it's like it's to show you it's just a thing. Like if anything, it just kind of helps us immerse a little more. Maybe we laugh a little bit more at each other's jokes, but we're all silly people by nature. So it's
very fun. Your show.
We try to advocate for normalcy more than anything, you know. So
I feel like a very common thing while playing D&D is like a lot of people will sit down like pizza and beer, and I feel like drinking alcohol is going to make it far harder to play D&D.
Yeah,
like if you're drinking excessive amounts, because I remember when I was in Australia and we play for like 8-hour sessions. And we drink the whole time. And by hour 5, we were like, nothing was happening. We were just and we're like, weed doesn't really have that effect. It doesn't really just like fuck you, like fucking destroy you if you're like,
Yeah, like worst case, you're probably like if you're too high, you're probably just gonna try to make a weird joke. And what is better to laugh at than weird jokes? So it's the best double-edged sword. But yeah, no, that's it's we try not to make a huge deal out of it. Like we have a couple like we do a crit hit, so when we crit, we all take a hit. That's like a
nice.
And when now we've made it where we crit, we do it on ones too. Because I was like, what's better than a 5% chance to take a hit? Let's make it 10. So we do a happy crit and a sad crit hit. And it's like, so we've got like some smoking rituals and stuff, enough to where it's like, I want people that smoke weed and play D&D, because there are a ton of us, to just, it's like, it's not a big deal. It's not, we don't sit around like, oh man, are you so high right now? Shoot, I'm an orc, bro. Like it's we actually, we get into some real, people have cried and, it's like you've all experienced, I mean, that's D&D at its core, but it's oral storytelling, this ancient tradition. But it's like, I find the games that I play with people who do smoke, I tend to have far more like emotionally real moments with like that extra layer of immersion where it's like you're willing not only to step out of yourself into this character, but like make yourself vulnerable a little bit. It's like as an actor, that's something you thrive on, is that vulnerability in the moment. And so to see it in a D&D context, it's like, okay, and maybe there's something to that. And so that's why our show has been, it's Weednd D&D, but it's it's built around that idea, is that it's like maybe there's something to this. It's like there was people in jungles that used to smoke herbs before they told their whole oral tradition, and so it's like there's something about that it also is a really easy way for me to be like, hey, is it cool if I smoke weed and play D&D? So
it's the name of the show, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I have something I'd love to touch on, which is a little more like D&D technique that you mentioned, which is something I think about a lot, which is you're talking about, sometimes my players miss a detail, and so I have to bring it up in another way. And this is one I'd love to open up everyone here, and particularly interested in Tim. What do you folks do when you feel like your players have missed something that you feel is important to them, but you don't want to spoon feed it to them or make them feel dumb for having missed it? Because this is something like I've got a party where like we're all kind of dumb, and I'll just be like, guys, you missed this important thing. You should go to this castle. And I like that is the culture at that table, but that is not something I'd ever recommend. Like that's just something we've built over time. So like, please, if anyone has like beloved strategies, I need them.
I don't know. I find I try not to hit it over the head too much, because I try not to build too many encounters where it's like, I find if the storytelling lends itself, like as it comes together organically, the important points hopefully are clear. And I kind of like if something gets missed, if that thing is important enough, like I think about the bag of golding, where it's like, it was a thing, and it wasn't necessarily a huge thing at the time, but it was like, this is an open thread, and that was like passed over. And then you guys like periodically would kind of come back to it and be like, yeah, maybe we should deal with what's like, once you figured out that like something about, they got this bag of golding that was turning all their coins counterfeit. And they didn't find out right away. It was like they were spending these coins, like they would put their coins in, they'd take them out and they'd be counterfeit, but they didn't realize. And then one time, like an NPC that they were with was like, yo, like this isn't real gold. And they were like, what? And then they figured out that it was like all this thing, but they were like, yeah, you guys were like level 7 or something. Like it was a while ago that they found out. And you periodically thought about dealing with it, and then you kind of got somebody on to like figuring out how to explore it further, but then you still were just kind of put it out. And then by the time you did get to it, it was a big problem.
So fucking.
And then now it has like huge ramifications because he left it. There's this huge counterfeit operation, and then like there's like now a new god of greed because there was this dragon, and he essentially amassed this horde big enough to summon Tiamat, and then killed Tiamat. And now there's a new god of greed. But I kind of like when that happens, like, because it's like the world keeps turning, and if it is a big thing like that, then the payoff later, when inevitably it like crosses the party's path again, is kind of more satisfying, because it's like, oh shit, oh no, like unless it gets missed entirely.
So
then it's
So Sean, I'm gonna ask, like, when you talk about like important details, like I feel like there are a lot of different types of important details that I react way differently to as a DM. So like, what do you sort of have in mind?
Excellent question. I guess, plot hooks or like specifically if there's some sort of mystery going on, like maybe one character isn't what they seem to be, and they miss every fucking clue that suggests that they are a vampire or a demon or whatever. So when they inevitably become a demon, it's like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? And I'm just like, no, it was
the 30 people, man. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I find that so hard, because I find that it's just as likely when you get to them turning into a demon that you get the reaction of all of them going, oh my God, everything all of a sudden makes sense. Like all these little things that you said that I just sort of like brushed off. Like this is a beautifully long-term constructed plot.
It makes you look brilliant. Yeah.
It makes you look brilliant.
If they do that final boat, that's the gamble. You're out there naked and it's like, am I invisible? So it's
yeah.
But yeah, it's like you said, that's at the end of that 2.5-year campaign that we just ended. It was one of those things. It was like this army of these owl knights. And it was like, oh crap, we've been seeing owl knights for 2.5 years. I remember the first two, there was that dead owl knight. And it was like, oh my God, my DM's the most brilliant writer that's ever lived. He tricked me the whole time. But yeah, had I not tied that bowstring for him, it would have been like, oh, well, all right.
So
cool.
I guess where I'm left here is that I sort of feel like there's two different scenarios. The first scenario is they're actually missing what you're saying. Like they're not registering it into their memory to come back later. And the other hand is they just aren't putting 2 and 2 together.
Process.
And when they aren't putting 2 and 2 together, I think that's just story building.
Yeah.
Because you can just keep going that way, and eventually they put something together and everything snaps together and it's an amazing story. I mean, we've all had that moment where we're like in the governor's mansion about to go do something, and you see one piece of evidence that makes everything snap together, and you're like, oh, I'm in so much danger here because I understand everything now and it's terrible. That's awesome D&D.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you show up in the governor's mansion and you're like, here's this piece of information. And they're like, that's so random, man. And you're like, no, I gave you so much stuff. So I think those are two really different things. I think one is awesome and one's not.
I also have the privilege of my wife is the lore keeper and takes meticulous notes and will not miss anything and will ask me after if she thinks she has missed something. So it's like nothing gets by her. So I'm lucky in that sense where it's like, and I know any detail that I throw out will be taken down in a note and cataloged.
I like playing with that players miss stuff kind of thing because I'm running a horror campaign at the moment, and I was doing a moment where they were making tea to decompress for a moment, and as they were going through the drawers, I was describing it very casually as you move the pen aside and the paper aside, the inkwell full of blood, you find the notebook, and casually throwing out incongruous things very, very mixed in with very, very mundane things is so unnerving, because if the players catch it, they go, sorry, what? Like, what's in the inkwell? But if they don't, part of their brain will, like, it just sets that tone of like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. There's something wrong with this scene.
It makes you so uneasy when you just hear inkwell of blood. I'm sorry, what was that? The inkwell for the pen that you used. You write something down, it's like completely normal. It's like, okay, you said blood though.
So like even playing with that players can miss stuff and like details get lost that will eventually then be discovered later. I don't think spoon feeding them, I don't think you can spoon feed a player anything, because anything you give a player, whether they accept it or not, is you just like putting it forward. And so it's not a matter of like you being like, here, this is the information you need. It's just you lay the information out. If they miss it, that's on them. Like,
I feel like what I've learned here is the moral of the story is, for you create the story that you want to tell. Let's say the mystery. We love the governor's mansion and the governor's vampire. We love that. If you feel like they're not getting the clues that the governor's a vampire, you can either be like upset that your brilliant twist isn't going to work, or you make the governor a governor. Like, I guess how often, because I think I've done this, but like, yeah, we're just like, oh, they're not getting the story I'm telling. Okay. This is D&D. Like, there's no fucking script.
Yeah, it's part of their story, you know. It's like their details that led you to that point too. Maybe it's not that anymore because they're part of the contribution to what D&D is. The player help story writing. It's like, okay, they're actually writing. Maybe it's a better story than, you know, the guy. Now, okay, well now who is the freaking vampire man? Yeah. Oh God, it's the butler. You know, and so it's yeah, man. I think you're right. I think that's great player contribution there.
Especially if it's homebrew, because you're never going to have people be like, well, I watched that story and that's not how it ended for me. Because like, if it's homebrew, those players are experiencing a unique thing that only they will ever experience. Yeah. So if you go, fuck, I need to pivot, no one will know. No one will know but you.
And bam, D&D is homebrew, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's weird.
Hearing... Oh, so, no, go ahead.
No, I want you to go now.
Well, I've just been hearing a lot about your world building, and I would love to hear it from you. Like, what are you most proud of in your awesome show?
I'm actually building a campaign setting called Ganjaria, and the premise of this is that like the old gods are gone, the Feywild has taken over the main realms. And in order to fight off the Shadowfell, they've given men magic back through this plant from the Feywild, ganja, which is going to be like the magic system of D&D. Now, some of the, all DMs I find are very punny people. So my world is built with verbal puns. There's like the Five Nations are like Sativan, the Indicus Empire, the Diesel Dynasty, and stuff. Yes. But it's also like, I love D&D. So it is a full world that has stakes and real characters and conflict, and it's a whole world that you can go explore. I'm not trying to tell one story, but it's like it's an entire world. So what we've done, because we couldn't launch the show the way we wanted to because of COVID, we wanted to launch on 420. We made the plan 2 years ago when we first started like building the business plan for this show. And like we built this whole studio for the show. It's like a whole big thing that we haven't been able to roll out the way that we wanted to. And so what we're calling this is the prologue to Ganjaria. So this is the world as it existed before the world becomes Ganjaria, the campaign setting that we will be playing in Weednd D&D when we're all live in studio. But I found this was like a fun way. And as DMs, I like sharing this part. I've now opened a lore I used to have finished. I used to know exactly why Ganjaria happened. And now I have enough trust in what the story my players are telling that I have like, all right, I know all the players and everything, but how are they going to change I know what the world's going to be, but I'm totally letting them help me write how we get there for like a full campaign setting. And it only stems to the trust that like I have in my players as storytellers. And that it's like, I have in the 6 months we've been doing this show, I think that's something I've learned the most. I always was a D&D player. I haven't been a DM quite as long. I would now say I'm a DM who plays D&D. But really the contribution of the player, that it's like, you have all these babies, you know, that you love and you want to tell your story a certain way, but it's like if they decide that they want to tell a different story or a better story, sometimes just letting them do that and then being there to facilitate it is a way more valuable experience for everybody than me getting to tell you the story I wanted to tell you. And so I learned a lot about D&D just from doing it every week with specifically these people. And I'm taking that risk by like we're going to publish the setting. It'll be like a book you can get. I've got piles of art for it right over here that are it's just incredible. But it's like, I'm not done writing it yet, because I'm going to let this show, what we've done, dictate the way that things are in the end. So it's been really exciting.
That's something that fascinates me when talking to GMs, because like it's almost always like an ad hoc self-taught, like you don't go to school to be like there's no like avenue to take to be a DM. Like, this is the right way. If you do these 3 steps, you'll be the best DM ever. Like, it's always like people being like, I like this game. I want to tell a story. I'm gonna figure it out. Like, just kind of, and it's so interesting to see people kind of come to their own flavor, their own brand, just by like feeling it out and figuring out what appeals to them, what appeals to their players. Like, it's fascinating to me to have this art form that we all participate in that is so varied and so like subjective or object. One of them is subjective. Thank you.
Yeah, just like the collaborative storytelling.
It's wild.
It's so much fun. That's one of the things that like I found as a DM, because I have an extensive improv background, that like just like saying yes is like I love. Yeah, exactly. And like I'm like I found I have more often than not pivoted away from necessarily what I've planned, because it's like the players, you guys come with good ideas, or something organically happens in the session that it's like, okay, let's take it this way now. Like it's easier to do that.
Yeah, that's the best thing. It's better than any one mind. It's all of your minds working together, and that's when all the good D&D happens. You know, so it's like.
Well, I have to ask, because I've never heard this like setting for a campaign, is that you've built the world, but you're doing a prequel. And so like, let me make sure I got this straight, is that, you're open to have it change, but like by the end of this prequel campaign, the fucking gods are going to be dead and the Feywild's going to have taken over. But you've also introduced a party of fucking adventurers who can throw a wrench in like, what if one of those two things doesn't happen because of this other thing?
That's the most exciting part, dude. It's like, I believe one thing that I love from Matt Colville that he talks about a lot is multiple fail states. And he talks about it more in regards to skill challenges. Like, don't make it where, I fail and it sucks. It's like, give them multiple opportunities. Indiana Jones is sliding down the cliff edge and he fails 3 saves before he finally gets himself. I like to do that in the world as well. And so it's like to see them kind of like building this narrative of their own characters. And it's like, I'm like, haha, you don't even know that I know about this guy and this guy. And it's like, they're playing right into my hands. Like it's perfect. In fact, some of the stuff that they have done has now made me tweak. Now I have to keep tweaking, because I do want this thing to be ready when we're about to make that switch. But it's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, that's better. Oh, and now this is this thing. And now, oh my gosh. And so it's like, it's helped me answer a lot of questions, I think, in a weird way, more than the terror of like, oh my God, what if they completely save the world? And it's
what kind of questions? Like, I'm fascinated. What kind of questions has it helped you answer in your own setting?
Without giving a ton away.
I was gonna say,
they may be watching.
No, this is a good one, because we're aware of this at this point. So Divot, who was he was our bard character to begin with, and then has now become this like manifestation of death, and has like died and talked to death, and death has like seeded his power in him, and now Divot in Ganjaria has to be death. And so it's like, in the end of this, because Divot is now a revenant, so once his course is done, he will die and can't come back to life. So like the character itself, like the PC couldn't get, resurrected and keep his character alive. That like there is a pointed end to his character once he achieves the objective of destroying Synthesis in all of his forms. Well, one of the people in the group is one of Synthesis' forms. So there's like these things playing out as they learn these realities to their characters. And so again, it was like, well, how does death work in a world where gods don't have power? Like what's that going to be symbolized? identifies as. And now this swarthy bard with a big orange beard that plays a banjo that greets you and takes you to the other side, to me is so fantastic. Awesome. And now we've got to meet Divot. The show Weednd from till now will be like, do you want to know who that character was? You can watch him when he was a man. Like, we're writing the myths of this new world. And so it's just so fucking cool, man. It's the greatest experiment that I've been a part of, and it just keeps, again, the more I give them, the more I'm like, you tell me what we're doing. You tell me where you're going. You tell me. And it's like, then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my God, you don't even know you just did that thing that justifies this thing that's about, it's so, it's been a blessing, man. As a DM among other DMs, it has been fantastic.
I absolutely love that flexibility of a mindset as a DM. I know, like, as a DM, you spend so much time making the story and you're like, but I love it. It's mine. But as a player, nothing's more frustrating than, like, the story seems like it's going this way and you do something that moves it this way and the DM going, that was great, and then push it,
Oh, but you can't go down that road.
Yeah, or like, even
under construction.
Like, I've done it.
But even more than that, like, you have an interaction with some random NPC that's, you make on the spot, Sean. Like, having that NPC that was created not by the DM, I mean, like, they created, but found not by the DM, not intended to be in the game. The DM then can either bring that into their game or basically have that NPC sort of disappear.
Yeah.
And it's so much more rewarding as a player to have those things feel like they're incorporated into the game and feel like there's value in you moving. You don't just have to stay exactly on the rails, because whatever you do adds to the game and adds value. It's not a takeaway to move away from where the story's supposed to be going. Exactly. And so I love all of that, where you're like, well, I guess he's going to be a god now, because that leaves the player feeling like, if I play my cards right, I'm going to become a god. Watch out.
So, I have a question from the audience, and it's paraphrased a little bit, but how do you guys balance the micro and the macro of world building, balancing the big world events with the small pieces in the background?
I'll do
I think, Vam, you're the guest. You can jump in first.
So there's two kind of quick little answers to that. I do follow my adventure, kind of the module, the 1 to 5 is like you're a regional person learning the world. 5 to 10, you become a little bit of a local hero of sorts, or villain, however determines. 10 to 15, you start being known in the country. 15 to 20, you're solving the world affairs kind of model. I do like that model, but I find it's fun to just, as far as the world is concerned, give a couple people, like the big powers that be, objectives, and then let the players either not ever bother with those objectives ever, and so their plan continues as planned, and you can kind of see the world evolve outside of their action. Like, oh, these guys are trying to raise this dead god. Well, if you never go to that temple and you never stop that priest, then maybe the god of death is now raised in the world, and you have to now, and so it makes the players feel like all plot hooks are juicier when they all matter, and so it's like, even just the idea, maybe they don't all lead to that, but the idea of it seems to be the way I like to link. I like to world build as a player. I love getting my city, my town, building it into a place and having an army and stuff. Like, that's a huge, I don't know why, but I love that part of the game. And so it's like, as a DM, I kind of follow that traditional scale as like what they're kind of being influenced by or noticing. But for the macro scale, just give like some really great objectives and plans, and then let them progress.
Yeah, I agree. I have found in my own playing, I'm a big small scale guy. Like, I'm like, what is the party interacting with here and there? And inevitably, the world is always built out when people are like, oh, well, we gotta go talk to the king. Who's that? I'm like, well, that's Gerald the Greedy. You know what I mean? Like, like, what I have found in my own, because I have observed that I am more of a player than I am a DM. I don't necessarily love world building. I love yes-anding, but there's the type of, like, the common DM where it's like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write I'm going to fill out the entire map. I go the other way, where the players ask, what's on that part of the map? And I'm like, oh, here's what you need to know for that. And then I make that note. I'm like, oh, okay, that is like the archetype of, the local mafia, is that they're like, I don't know, they love to poison people. They're the poisoning Jennies or whatever the fuck. And then he's like, oh, if that's the thing we know. And then like, when you talk about the objective, I say like, now that we've created this NPC or this organization, I can't help but like breathe life into it. And I'm like, oh yeah. And they're going to be doing this. If you ever touch on them again, they are working towards bringing back the god of death or whatnot. But for me, it all comes from micro, and then the macro exists basically as the players invent it. So almost, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so one of the things that I've sort of think a lot about this is, this is something that from Chris Solo said when we were talking about maps on Fabled 42 panel on map making, is that he's tried to make a world, got super into it, made like 60 cities, like the bare bones, and then ran out of interest and stopped, and he never finished it. He's now finished a different one, but that was sort of like where he started. And so I think the big answer for me is that DMing is supposed to be super fun. It's an activity that you're supposed to like doing.
Absolutely.
Like that's why you do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think you should be sitting there being like, oh, like 40% needs to be like country and international affairs building, and 60% needs to be cities. Do what you find fun. Like if you love making little intricate, interesting cities, do that. If you love making cool NPCs, do that. You know, at some point in your game, stuff's going to come up where it requires things, but that's where a little bit of improv comes in. But I would say like you're going to have a way better product to present to your players if it's something that you enjoy doing, instead of being like, well, shit, I better fill these cities in because I bet I should do it.
When I started the campaign that we're playing in, after the one shot, because it started as a one shot originally on New Year's Eve, bunch of people, some had played D&D, some hadn't, and it kind of grew out of that because they were like, this is so fun, let's keep playing. And so one of the first things I did is I built the continent that you're on, and I filled it with cities. I made the map, and then I went through all the cities and like laid out like what kind of government structure and like what's the kind of racial makeup and, you know, like how do things operate. And I really enjoyed it. I kind of fell down the rabbit hole. But it's been really fun now as things progress, because there's tons of places you haven't been to yet that I've written notes about, to like either go back and be like, okay, I'm going to pluck this and this. Like, I don't think any of them are exactly as how I laid them out initially. And it's fun to go back and be like, oh, okay, I can just use this and use this, but then like mold it to fit where you're at in the story. And like, that's certainly for me how I've like managed a lot of the micro, where it's like I'll have some notes about it, but then I can just sort of twist it and mold it to fit the needs of the story in that moment, or tie it to something else. And then I feel like the macro for me, like especially with like story arcs and things like that, I tend to work from themes, like depending on where you're at and what's going on with the players, I kind of like, you know, kind of from there sort of spin out a theme that I want to sort of like that's kind of like the working theme for what's going on in the world at any given time. Like I can't tell you what you're in right now because you're all playing in the story, but certainly like, you know, your party is all very close with the gods. Like there's a lot of that interplay, and that's been the like kind of thinking about that scale of things, like not necessarily like the gods as a whole, but sort of your relationship and like on a broader scale, like, you know, people's relationship with the gods and what that looks like, you know, and it's been very fun. And recently I started doing like prehistory stuff as an experiment to see like the sort of prehistory of the world. And that's been really fun to see how that sort of informs, like now knowing what I know about the world, then going back and being like, how do I write it to fit what is now the reality? And that's been quite fun too. Yeah.
I really enjoy the macro. Like I really love building worlds. And this isn't really touching on the question itself, but like when I approach building a new world, I like to, it's almost like the Brandon Sanderson model. Brandon Sanderson, if you're not familiar, brilliant author, really good. And he writes these book series, and they're all they're all connected via like a larger multiverse, but each series has its like the world that the book series is set, has its like laws of magic. So he has one brilliant book series called the Mistborn trilogy, where basically the consumption and metabolization of metals allows you to like do different powers. So like steel allows you to push metal away from you, iron allows you to pull metal to you. If you like drink it and metabolize it, it's very complex, and he like does this really, really cool thing. And I like to do that when I build a world, like come up with something about that world that is unique to that world. So I built a world that was this like crescent tear shaped continent, but it turned out that in the like before 4 times, all of the planes had existed on a single plane in one place, like in concentric circles, with the like yin to the yang of the crescent tear being the Feywild over like touched together in this big circle that like went out and out. And eventually the players accidentally like broke the seal and brought back that state of the world in this like crazy chaotic, like the hells were accessible by foot. And so like that was the thing. Like Antaria, which Tim played in, was the gods had a very, very strong tie. Excuse me. And Antaria was built off the premise of like, if the bad guy won, but then wrote all the religious law as like, no, I'm the good guy, I'm the good god, I'm the god. Like all of them are Satan and I'm God and you worship me and I'm the good one. But like in reality, the devil won and was just playing the longest con. And then like the newer one that I'm building, it's all about these gates that are like intertwined and you can like travel between vast different distances, traveling through these gates. And then that always tends to inform the micro, because it's like there's this state in which the world, this like commonly accepted reality, this commonly accepted thing that like kind of everyone knows about and everyone deals with, and so that affects like the little stuff of like how do you work in the day-to-day. And like Bam, I agree with you completely. Like I like to kind of get my like list of players, my big movers and shakers of the world, give them their personality traits, their flaws, and their like what the players have. I can't remember the third one. Ideals, yeah. And then also giving them 3 things that they want to achieve. Like, what am I aiming for? What do I want to do? And then not backing down from that, being like the racist elf that wants to wipe out all other races. He's going to want to keep doing that regardless of what's happening in the world. Like his goal, kill everybody. Like fuck non-elves. I'm an elf, I'm the best. And like, like Elf Hitler is going to do Elf Hitler until Elf Hitler shoots himself in his bunker. Like, like stick to your guns kind of thing. So yeah, the macro plays out while the micro like concurrently happens.
There's a cool kind of thing that plays with that I'm toying with. That there's this concept that I'd like to present to you guys. I don't know if any of you have ever tried anything like this, but where in your world you give those motives, those actions, those ideas to another DM. So you just go like, hey, so you're the king in this empire. Here's your resources. Here, just hit me up with your objectives. I'll check in with you from time to time. Did the players interfere with those objectives at all? No. Okay, well, your first step, that's a success. What would you do? You know, and then it's like, it's not stuck in your own mind. It could be like, again, a little bit of a collaboration without anybody touching your babies too much. You know, it's like, I've toyed with it for doing that when we go to Ganjari with Weednd D&D, having a couple other DMs play the main character, just the motives of the main, and just like a fun little thing for them, like, you know, just, you know, once every week or two, here's a couple questions or whatever, boom, done. You know, and then it's like, oh man, I bet they'll do things that I would never even think of, and then the world evolves outside of even me.
That's what I was thinking like when you're saying that, it's like you can be surprised by your own story in a way that like you wouldn't be able to do if you were writing it yourself, where you're like, oh fuck, that's what that character does. Like, I didn't think of that.
You guys should have stopped.
Wow,
him.
like
Let me take it to the next level. I love this, but let me pitch you. It doesn't really matter the setting, but let's say it's in something like big, small, like Italian warring city states. If you give each of the players, like, you are a character, but you're also like the Doge of Milan.
Yeah, that's
like,
cool.
I will play the Doge of Milan if you ever encounter it, but you are in charge of what the Doge wants to pursue. And like, This is just coming like is
macro. That's like the ultimate macro micro experience. It's
with
like
the caveat. Sorry, no, please continue.
No, it's like it's that thing where it's like you're suddenly like those two don't have to intersect. It's just like oh, and in the world powers, you're doing this thing while your character does this thing, and then you feel dude, man, that could be brilliant, bro. You might have just cracked the code.
I mean, I am always cautious in laying things like that down because I know I come from a place of privilege that I have only really ever played with very, very good players that won't abuse shit.
Absolutely.
Whereas like some DMs out there might not have that privilege and they're like, hey, you're the king of like Durban Watts.
And
like what's the king of Durban's Watts doing? And they're like, well, they're going to send Jiggly
10,000 gold.
10,000 gold right now and all the magical items of the kingdom.
So let's play in the space. Let's play in the space. Because like this is so exciting to me because talking about world building, best campaign I've ever played in terms of world building was one in which we played a mini game. I forget what it's called, but basically you all played as gods. Everyone created gods. Okay, we're getting. Oh, there's a shirt under the shirt. Very good.
It's the same color as the previous shirt.
I was just ripping off my top.
It's getting hot about it.
But basically, everyone created two gods, and over the course of like 3 sessions, everyone built the world through its own like mini games, and so everyone knew the interpolitics between the gods and how everything came. And so like the players were invested in the lore because they built it. And so if we're a level 1 to 5 party at the whims of the greats in the world, but we're also the greats in the world, but importantly, we don't know what any of the other people want or are doing. So like the party stuff all happens together. The like macro stuff happens on that individual level you were talking with the DM. And everyone's committed. No one's going to break the game. They understand that the wants of their royalty are different from the wants of their adventurer. Let's play in this space. Come join me.
You're almost talking about writing roleplay. So like there's a thing that my friend tried to get me and my other friends to do, and it just didn't really happen. But it's essentially like it's writing a story as from a character's perspective, but you get to decide what the story does. So you're writing it from their perspective, but all the characters involved, and you write like a chapter, and then they write the next chapter, and then the next person down the line writes a chapter, and you see where the story goes. That kind of like reminds me of that, where it's like put the trust. It's a trust heavy exercise where you have to be like very.
I mean, we had something similar in our campaign with Emma, because she came up with she came to the table with her character, but also the goddess that she wanted for her character. Like she was like, this is like, she's the goddess of, the moment of life and death. So it was like, okay, well, if that's true, then the Raven Queen is out of the picture. Cause I homebrewed the world, but I stole all the gods more or less from Fori.
That's what we all do. Yeah. That's why I killed them all. I was like, I kind of want to deal. I use all I mix and match them from every pantheon. Yeah.
So she came to the table. So it was like, okay, the Raven Queen is off the table then. So it was like, now I have I can contrive this world where it's like, well, the Raven Queen died, which then has become since, because of actions of the party, she has come back as the matron of vengeance, because like she was locked away in the negative plane and all this stuff. But that was like, she came to me with the goddess and also this like rich tradition that her order follows. Like she came up with like all of these incredible rituals and the naming conventions and all of this stuff, and it was like, yeah, this is great. We collaborated on like aspects of it, and we're like, what about this, and we worked back and forth on it. But it was definitely like she came to the table with a lot, and I was like, yes, of course, like this is cool. And like because of that, it has led to, and we didn't know this at the time, but because of that, it has led to some really incredible moments and stuff like that. And I even think about and I can think of moments with all of you that like things in your backstory that you've created about the world have then now influenced the story, like all the stuff about the scar and like how rich that's become. All like Kokanee, like with Velsum and all of that, like that was a huge arc. Like Finnan with all the stuff around Wolfreen, like that was a big driving force of like, okay, like how is Wolfreen structured, and how does like your standing before affect your standing in like you are more aware of the politics of like that kind of stuff, and people like Cato and stuff like that. Like there's all these things where it's like, you know, when you bring a character's backstory into it and just allow to like just be like, yeah, that's all true, it like you are already doing that in a way, and it can be big, it can be small, but it like, as long as you like, I think as a DM being open to that and saying yes and bringing those in, like you can create those incredible moments and spin them out even more.
Yeah. Okay, so two things. One, I absolutely love the idea of having somebody else make some decisions for your big characters in a game, because what makes a villain good? I mean, there's lots of things that make villains good, but one of the things is having them be a little bit unempathetic or amoral, and also having them be unpredictable. And that combination is very scary.
Yeah.
Because they can do anything. And so having somebody that you don't know and can't read be the person making big decisions makes most characters unguaranteed to be moral and far less readable than the DM. Like we're like, okay, we know Bam's style. Like he likes this, he likes that.
Yeah, that's the bad guy.
But the king
the one who'll be back.
is being run by somebody.
and who no one in the party knows
exactly.
Who's playing.
I was just about to say, like, is this something that you do not reveal? So if they meet that NPC, here comes the question: do you bring that person in, or do you just keep it a secret and you run it as the DM?
So I think, as far as I can tell, what the DM does is the DM just takes broad strokes from this other person.
Yeah.
So it's not playing it. It's like, it would be like, this is what's happening in your world. How do you want to deal with it in 3 sentences? And they're like, yeah, we're going to move our troops over here and we're going to start killing those people.
Well, because Bam, you were saying you have started to do this. Like, is that like, how has that been run for you in like, you know, on like a first-hand experience?
It's pretty crazy. I mean, the like, honestly, it works because it's exactly what you say. And I think, honestly, by the time, because we're talking about like that micro to macro scale, by the time they meet the macro character, I feel like the other person will have served their purpose. Like, I'll know who that character is by level 15, when you meet the king, realistically, depending on, everybody can do it however they want. But, you know, it's around that level that all of a sudden you're like walking into the castle without the guards harassing you, you know? And so it's like, by then I feel like they've done it. They've now made that character for me, a character I didn't make, but now that I understand their objectives and their morals, I'll feel comfortable stepping into them. Now, I do want to preface that and say, I don't know, that could be pretty freaking cool though, to bring to like if the person's a person that can succeed in that format and with a little bit of information make it an enriching experience for the players. That could be super sick, you know, if y'all come in and play your crazy, evil blood king, like that it could be cool.
I'd worry, like, if you don't set up that person for success, that they come in and they're super intimidating for 15 seconds, and then the players are like, well, why did you do this? And he's like, DM, why did I do that?
Why did I do that?
but
right.
That could be so cool.
But again, if the person coming in playing that character is the person who's made that character, you don't have to worry about giving that information. That's the thing. Like, you don't have to worry about the information. They've given themselves that information where you're like, so why did you do this? Why did you kill all those people? They can just be like, because X, Y, and Z. Like,
I feel like it's a lot of trust. Like, it's a real trust exercise.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, like it choosing somebody.
I feel like anybody I would trust in the shoes of my world, I probably have that kind of trust. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm trusting you enough to play somebody in the world that I care about so damn much, you know, I probably trust you pretty good.
That would be so cool. I'd be so, as a player, I think I'd really enjoy the knowing that somebody who I don't know is controlling the actions of one of the kings or something like that.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty wild.
I'm telling you, we're hoping to integrate it a little bit, so
that's awesome.
You can watch it succeed admirably or fail miserably. So we'll be the guy in the tightrope.
So another question coming in is about party size and makeup. This is a bit of a left turn. I realize I pointed to the right, but whatever. What are your guys' thoughts on party composition? How many players do you try to have in a party that you're DMing for? And I'm going to add to this question: what's your perfect number? What's too much, and what's like the perfect number?
I like 3 because that means
3,
it's always going to be imbalanced. There's nothing. If it's a party of 6, all the same class. That's what I love. I love imbalanced parties because I think like unless you're playing like really high tier shit, like Tim, I mean, we have a rogue now, so now we actually are balanced. But like, I feel like our shit goes in flow, and that's awesome. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of the stuff I DM. A lot of my parties are also like haphazard because that's kind of my DM style. And so like having people flail at like, oh, if only we had a wizard, we could get past it. It's like, yeah, but you can't because you're a barbarian, a bard, and a rogue. Yeah. And like, none of you can levitate. What are you going to do? Yeah. That's where I thrive. And so when you do become a big party, then you just have all the answers. And it's about like group, like delegation and like synergy, which is like cool and whatnot, but I'm not smart enough to DM that. Yeah. So if I have a big party, I want them all to be one thing. Like, and I love all one thing parties. They're the best.
Yeah. Good. I mean, I vehemently believe that good party composition is the most unimportant thing in D&D. I see so many, like I'm on like the D&D, general D&D Facebook page, and people are always writing things like, hey, I'm just starting a campaign and they don't have a healer, like whatever will they do? Yeah. And it's like, either
what a gift.
Yeah. Either you give them healing stuff because you're the DM and you can do whatever you want, or they don't have healing and it's everything's super scary. Like
now everything matters.
If everything I do as a DM will now matter, and they won't just be like heal.
Yeah, if you have a solution to every problem, there's no suspense. Having bad characters and having big holes in your party that people have to collaboratively work together and figure out how to solve. That's what good D&D is. Now, second thing,
where the fun happens too.
Ideal party, I think it's about 4 or 5 for me. But I have played a game where we had 12 people who wanted to play a one-shot, and I had a second DM where the DMs played back-to-back with 6 people at each table, both playing in the same world that me and the other DM had built together. And every time people interacted, we would sort of lean and whisper to each other and make notes. So the world was changing based on how the other groups interacted, where they were both trying to get to figure out this mystery and steal something first. So you can do some cool stuff.
That's awesome.
That was an outstanding game. We had like sort of dividers between us, like those rolling ones you see in school. And so like the DMs were whispering between the dividers. So there are ways to get around things.
That's great.
Yeah.
4 to 5 is where you like to sit.
4 to 5 is where I like to sit. Anything less, I find that I struggle. Sometimes if you don't have 3 like really strong players, sometimes it'll be tough to keep up conversation, and I end up DMing more than I would like. And anything more than that is fine, but everybody gets to play a little bit less. I find that that's sort of the 4 to 5 is that sweet spot where I can often take a step back as a DM and they can play the game.
Yeah, 4 or 5 would be great, but 6 is perfect. And no, 6 is good. There is a challenge with balancing, but I found it's been a fun challenge for me to approach the way I think about encounters differently, especially combat. Like the way I think about combat now is so much different than when I started DMing, because it's like, because we have a big party, you're all very powerful with tons of cool shit. It's like, okay, like how can I put you in situations where combat is challenging, or like there's other factors that complicate combat. It's been fun that way. But I mean, I ran a one-shot for my birthday. This is 2 years ago now, I think. 2 years ago. That had like 12 people, and the only it was fun. Like the way I structured it, that's part of it, is like it's just how you structure the session. It was like they had to split up into teams to because they had to get 3 objectives done at the same time. It was like, which wound up tying into other stuff, but the biggest thing is just like making sure that everyone can hear each other. It's like that's the balance of like getting the players on board with being like trying to minimize crosstalk and keep everybody like somewhat engaged, either with each other quietly or like with the group. but like, I mean, with our group with 6, it's like, you guys are very good about that, of like giving each other space. But it's a learning, like, especially, and I think when we moved to Zoom from playing at home, it was like, that was a big thing of like, we really have to be on top of crosstalk, or else you just lose each other so quickly. So that was, I think, ultimately beneficial for us. But yeah, balancing is tricky, but fun. It's a fun challenge.
Yeah, I'm saying like 4, 5. I think 4 is I mean, if I'm being really honest, the math of the whole challenge rating system is built around the 4. I don't really utilize the challenge rating system that much, so maybe I don't know why I'm attached to that creature comfort of the 4-person party. I grew up playing with 2 people and a DM and had no problem. We had fantastic D&D our whole life. I've played one-on-one sessions and had a kick-ass time. It is a different experience. I find, because of the way I DM, and it sounds like a lot of you guys DM similarly, it's like I want you to get something out of this story more so than just these objectives that you're achieving. And I find beyond, and honestly, I would say 6 was the group that I had that was the biggest, where I felt that I was able to achieve that as well. Still, I've played with 7 and 9, and it was just like, it's like, Luke, look, I want to have each of you have a cool NPC that relates to your main cause or story some way, that interweaves with this weird thing you're all doing, but I can't do that, and it's like, there's not enough time for it. And so I find if I play, because certain people play D&D different. I have played with people that like a good dungeon delve, and they like to play the board game of D&D. Dude, you can have 12, 15 people doing that pretty easily, and everybody will have a pretty good time. But yeah, it's like, that's not the kind of D&D that I enjoy the most. I like these character-rich improvised storytelling, this kind of like thing. It's a little magical in what it is that you're able to create with the creativity and the imagination of all the people you're playing with. So yeah, that like 4 to 6 is like money. But I absolutely, like, if you can only find one other person that wants to play one-on-one D&D. I've had a blast doing it. It becomes a very personalized experience, and for that can be rewarding in its own way. And so, but yeah, dudes, I'm totally on that. I after 6, it's that. It's just like, there's just a little too much noise to make anything important for any one person. You have to kind of work with them as a group, like you said, which it sounded like, it's like, okay, well, I'll do this where it works best for this format, which again, is good DMing on your guys' part.
Also as a player, I find combat over 6 or 7 people to be absolutely so boring.
Tedious,
I talk down, like especially if a couple of people aren't super experienced and know exactly what they want to do. It's like, I go, and then everybody lives the same 6 seconds for like 8 minutes.
It's like a Beckett nightmare.
And the other thing is that you can't make plans for more than 1 turn of combat, because by the time your turn comes back,
so much has happened.
Fundamentally changed. So like, in your turn, you're like, okay, I'm going to shoot this guy, and then next turn I'm going to jump over this thing. And then by the time it gets back to your turn, it's like, well, there's nothing over there to jump to anymore. Everybody's dead or left. Like
you said, it could be
I was going to heal him. He's
time consuming or frustrating. Especially like, consider, you want to, like, when you get into combat, you want to resolve it. But if you have 7 people, and the way that I like to DM is, whenever there is a combat, I want it to be deadly. Like, I want you to probably die, because that makes it way more interesting. All the players are really engaged. It's not like a 7 party and then there's 10 goblins. Like, no, there's probably like something, there's probably something magical. There's a big bad hiding somewhere. It's like, one of you might die. But the problem is, when you've been playing like a really good, like 3 hours of RP, and then someone does something wrong because it's a party of 7 people and they got antsy, now there's combat. Now 7 people plus a deadly combat means welcome to sitting here for 2 hours waiting for your turn. Larger parties have like, someone will always want to do something, and more than not, like 2 people will always want to do something that conflict. So it won't be boring in those RP ways, but once you hit combat, if you want combat to be meaningful, sometimes it can get a little boggy.
I'm currently running a 3-person party, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy like small, intimate, like we haven't done it in much combat, so I haven't really had to work too much on the balancing. But just the role playing is, again, credit to the players. They're very good at keeping the role play moving. But yeah, it's lovely. I think the most I've ever DM'd for was like 14 or 15 at once. And that was a nightmare. It sucked. I think Tim, I think you were there. It was from it was the Jolene. It was the Jolene one shot or two shot. And it was so many people because it was like a cross campaign. It was 2 campaigns I was running simultaneously. Each campaign had like 6 or 7 players in it. I brought them together. It was
some fun moments, and the concept was very fun. It's just hard to it's hard to stay engaged when there's there's so much in between time. Like
you just kind of feel like a bear on a unicycle juggling because I keep everything up.
This is something that talking about the too many people in combat. This is something that's come up a couple times. I think just kind of more organically and wonderfully in our game with Tim is that the party gets split and then half the party gets in combat, and I joined only one of those like halfway through the fight, but most of the time I'm like sitting and watching, and contrary to what I would have expected as the person on the outs, I am completely engaged in that fight because I find what often happens in combat is I'm like, I'm planning ahead to my thing, and so I'm like, please just get through your turn, please just get through your turn. I want to cast Tensor's Transformation, let's go. But like, because the lethality is there, just 2 sessions ago party left and the party and the other half got attacked by bad snowflakes, and like I'm not doing anything. I'm just like, now I'm just a viewer but having a great time. So I think like don't split the party is conventional wisdom, but especially if it's a big party and like you want to do some like engaging combat, because then the turns just go boom, 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 fin in your back, boom, 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 fin in your back. What's it going to be?
I will say probably the combat that I was most engaged in with Blackwater was the second Velsoon fight, which for reference to Bam, my character left to go hang out with the girl that he liked.
Hang out.
It was really sweet. It was like a really sweet thing.
An evil lich invaded their magnificent mansion and like started killing people, and like I just wasn't there and just had to fucking watch as this dude like mind controlled one of our most powerful like melee fighters, and it was awful but also very, very enjoyable as I just got to be, for a moment I got to be a spectator and be like, fuck no, god no, anything but this.
Well, and it's like too with the story, like we a lot of us performers, we like talk about D&D is, I mean, it is an improv exercise. And if you've ever been to an improv show, the more actors you add to an improv show in a scene, the less happen. You know what I mean? It eventually starts to garble, and it's like at 3 people, okay, cool, I'm kind of following a couple storylines. 4 or 5, okay, and now there's groups starting to happen. 6, 7, cool. If there's like 12 people on stage all improvising together, it's not, even professionals can't do that. Like it's you're asking a lot out of So again, I think it comes to your play style a little bit. You can
Here's my question.
Okay.
Is there a way we can, aside from just splitting the party, which is hilarious and great, is there a way that we could like intentionally build this into our campaigns with 6 or 7 people where, say, you have 4 people fighting and you have 2 people who are still there in the combat, but I'm thinking contriving like, you know what? Here's what I'm thinking. It's fucking Attack of the Clones. Sorry, Matt, you haven't seen this, but like, that fucking Geonosis factory fight where you have the 2 things.
Oh yeah, they're blocked off.
Yeah. You have 4 of the party, a 6-person party, 4 of the people fighting in the factory, and 2 people, all they're doing is just working the direction of the thing. Like,
awesome.
Like I don't know. Like, this is my question: is would that be, or would you feel shitty as the player who's like, I'm just working the lever, this sucks? Or would you be engaged like, all I can do is move a lever?
It would seem like you would be engaged based on what everybody just said. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're watching the thing happen. You can actually affect it a little bit. But I would say based on, what I would say, I would be plugged in. Yeah. I'd be like, oh shit, which way's the lever gotta go?
I think it depends on the player as well. Like, again, I think it all comes down to like, I'd be sweating bullets, being like, if I pull the lever the wrong way, I could kill my friends. But that there are like those players that you were talking about that there to play the board game of D&D who'd be like, I have to fucking pull a lever. I want to kill shit, dude. I want to stab with a sword. Like,
also depends on like how close is the party. Like if this is session 1, like you're probably gonna have one dude who's gonna be like, haha, meat grinder. And like,
oops, sorry guys, everybody make new characters.
Yeah. But if this is session 20 and they're just gonna be like, okay, like I know in 3 turns the conveyor belt is gonna move to its maximum before it's dangerous, I will then move it back. Like it really does depend on who is working that. But I think that's a really good thing, is implementing those sort of like almost arena mechanics to keep the other players engaged. If you're not just like hitting stuff with a sword, that's a really interesting idea to think about. Like how could you build encounters where people are forced to interact with the environment instead of stab the thing.
I mean, Tim had an outstanding game that we had played, or an outstanding fight that we had against a couple of chains and a door. In the specific one where people, there were no bad guys in the room. It was 2 chains had to be pulled to hold a door up. And that was the fight, and it was hot in the room.
It was like a furnace. It was like they were going through this like temple. Essentially, it was like the tomb of the Raven Queen, and each god had made a room, or like each room was sort of a gift from each of the gods, and they had gotten to Moradin's room, and it was like they came down the chute and they landed in essentially a furnace. And there was chains at either corner, and so they had to forge something, but they had to the chains were pulled and it would open the grate, but somebody had to be in there essentially, because you had to be stoking the fire, and that was letting in how did it work? It was that was letting in air. It was heat. That's what it was. So that was letting in air to so the heat got more as it went on. So somebody literally had to be in there doing it while they were forging this thing. And it was wild, because they had to pull it together and hold it in place.
I've played with heat as a mechanic, and I think a tragically underused mechanic in D&D, especially 5th edition, is exhaustion. That's fucking terrifying when you're just rolling saves and you're at 4 levels of exhaustion. You're like, if I fail 2 more, I die. I'm just dead. I don't think that heat room. I think I did an encounter where they had to find these things in a volcano. And as they grabbed the last one, the kind of like that Indiana Jones, the boulder starts rolling, the heat started rising. And so they had to make their way through this kind of Warren tunnel back to the entrance, but it was getting hotter and hotter, and there was things in their way, and none of the things were threatening or life threatening, but they were in the way, and they just slowed them down enough that it was fuck, if we either fight this or we let it just keep stabbing us in the back while we run away from it, because it's a choice of do we run out of hit points because we're getting stabbed in the back constantly but we keep running, or do we suffocate and burn to death because we took so much time trying to kill this thing. And I think regardless of number, that is always a really threatening encounter, being it's just hot or it's just cold, and you have 7 tries, and if you fail 7 times, you're dead. You are just fully dead, and it's crazy.
I struggle a lot with exhaustion as a DM, because it has so many effects as they go up, and I cannot remember to enforce all of the effects on all the players that have different levels of effects over multiple sessions. That's a big struggle I have. I mean, if I've got great players who are super on it, that's on them. But if I'm playing with anybody who's modestly new, I find it so hard to track. This person has disadvantage on these things, and this person's half speed, and I find that very hard.
I try not to ever have exhaustion carryover, high levels of exhaustion carryover over a different session. Because if you have 1 level of exhaustion, your player has 1 level, they should be able to keep on top of that. But I try to if they have 3, 4, 5, at that point in reality in the world, they're not going to continue their adventure. Like they're not going to be like, all right, cool, I have like half hit points and roll with
Soldier
disadvantage
on.
and roll with this and my movement speed is halved and this and that. But we should go try to kill the Lich. It's like often they'll just be like, I need to sit down, fuck. Because it's just that, like at that level of exhaustion, regardless if it's 1 player or 6 players, they're going to need to stop. Because one,
That's like a valid thing to bring up too, is I find like, if anything, my players may want to rest too much. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I like exhaustion as an event, like you said, where it's like, there's a room and it's like, it's this in the moment. If you get out of that room, you know, you'll be fine. That's the only thing I would think about with adding exhaustion as a dynamic more into like the day-to-day life of my campaign, is it would encourage them. Even it's how much more can you encourage a long rest and be like, do you want all your hit points and spells back? You know what I mean? So it's like one more thing where it's like, maybe, which then, you know, maybe you do a little more storytelling in the off time and lean into that mechanic to balance that out too. So.
I try to always balance out with a ticking clock, because it's like, you can take a long rest, you can sleep for 8 hours, but in that 8 hours time, shit happens.
I'm on it right now. I'm doing it right now in our current arc. You got 7 days. The armies are coming. You know.
I'm loath to speak of this mechanic because I'm a warlock in our campaign. I don't want Tim to know about this, but I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, the newest video game that's based on D&D, and a mechanic that they have implemented in game that Sean and I have both agreed is very, very good and probably should be used, is you have 1 short rest per long rest.
Nice.
Once you click that short rest button on your game, it's that option is gone for you until you take a long rest. Granted, in the game of Baldur's Gate 3, you can long rest wherever the fuck you want. Like it's almost broken how often you can long rest.
Yes,
but
the sleeping roll and divinity.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I don't think that because it's early access, I don't think they have that ticking clock mechanic in there yet. But like, if you're like, my party short rests after every combat, if it's like you can short rest once in a day, and that is reasonable and fair. But Tim, you shouldn't do that because I'm a warlock and I need my spells, baby.
I already don't have any spells. Come on.
Yeah, I do the shitty thing where I'll like cast my 8-hour spells in the morning and be like, so I got up an hour earlier than everyone else and I've cast all those spells.
I know it.
And I'm gonna just chill out for a little bit.
I only sleep for 4 hours, so I wake up. I cast the spell and then sleep for 4 hours. So the next 4 hours of my day I still have. But I know that move.
I hate to speak to it, Adam, but I think that's a great idea, Tim.
It is a good mechanic.
And it's not to mess with Adam. I think that
it's a very good mechanic.
Some of our best D&D is when we're all 2/3 tapped.
Yeah, that's what this, like where you guys are right now has been a very fun. It's been very different. Like they're in this like northern continent called Garyang, and it's very much like wilderness. It's like frontier kind of thing. They're in these mountains. There's all these giant clans, and it has been just like it's a hard place, and it's like icy and relentless. Like, and it's fun for me because you guys haven't really been in any places yet that have felt like that kind of like meat grinder sort of vibe, and this has definitely been like it's a hard living place. Like there's a lot of dangerous stuff here.
It's an interesting sort of duality because it's so dangerous, and yet we also have teleport and the magnificent mansion. So we're like, we're out.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't say too much, but I mean, how has that been balancing that for you, Tim? Where
I mean, like that's been part of the like your sort of like if you think about. I mean, we had a session not last week, the week before. That whole session was literally just the mountainside. You started at the mountainside and you got down to the edge of the forest. Like that was the whole session. Like a lot happened. Like you did have a rest in the mansion, but like there was I think 2 combats, like because it was there was the avalanche and then you guys rest. Like it was right after that. So it was like it started with a combat where you were split up, and then you rested in the middle, and then like you made your way down. So it's like your progress as you're moving through the place has been like slow. Whereas some like at other points in our campaign, travel has been, I mean, you guys you've had this plane shifting ability for a while, but even like traveling on foot and stuff like that generally has been more like you might have one encounter and then you kind of do the day. But this is like, you're kind of fighting for inches. Like,
as
you're making your way through.
So I just have a comment here from Jen in the comments saying that she begs to differ, Tim, and that you have put her through a literal meat grinder.
That's true. She fell.
So
to be fair, she fell into the
but we have experienced a meat
You're
grinder.
right.
Yeah. Again, that was the Tomb of the Raven Queen. There was like, I don't think you guys didn't even encounter the monster. Could have been triggered there. There was like one
game arc
sort of thing, but it was just a horrible place.
I will say one of the things that I can see Tim does and is great because Bam, we're level 14 at this point. We've been playing for about 3 years. So that's the question is like, how do we deal with a party with 2 wizards and 2 clerics who have plane shift and teleport and every heal and every revive? Like, how do you keep the suspense? And one of the things that I see Tim does a lot is it's not just we're traveling and every time it gets too hot, we bamf out, sleep, and come back in. He gives us reasons why we have to stay.
Yeah.
So, it's not like, it's like where we killed all the giants and then we're going down the hill and Tim's like, and you hear a scream. Yeah. And we were going to leave and now we can't leave because we have to go do that. And then we do that. And then it's, well, here's a polar bear that needs like saving. We have to go do that. So we can't, that's not a thing where we can say, hang tight, polar bear. We'll be back in a tight 8. We're going to leave here and catch them quick.
Go to our mansion real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think
there's a fear of high magic, I think, for newer DMs particularly, because to me, it's like, once, by the time you get teleport or plane shift or something, it's like, yeah, that's kind of the world you're playing in at that point. Like the guys you're chasing are doing that shit too. They're just walking through a portal and they're on another plane now. We don't need to talk about what spell he cast. He just did it because you're at that level, It's like people that are scared of like a flying speed. It's like suddenly I have to think about my world in 3 dimensions, and it's like, well, yeah, but at the same time, that gives you a bunch of fun new things to so rather than being scared of it, I would say, especially because it does seem daunting to a newer DM. It's like, how do I deal with the wish spell? How do I deal with this? It's like that's the reality of the world now. It's like as they get exposed to this new magic, I kind of like the world exposing them to that magic at the same time. It's like you can cast fireball, but now there's 12 wizards on that hill that can all cast it too. You probably don't want to mess with that group of 12 wizards.
They just saw you do it and they're like, whoa, okay.
Hey,
get on the block.
I'm like, yeah, what's up? Come on up here, dude. Yeah, new character.
Nice fireball, nerd.
Nerd. Oh, he's not even an evocation wizard, guys. Way to burn your party, loser.
There is no archetype I love more than wizard hipsters. Yeah. For like, oh, you practice enchantment.
Nice.
Fucking, I only do abjuration.
I knew you were gonna say that. You know why? Because I'm a divination wizard.
I'm more into artisanal necromancy.
So we mentioned earlier splitting the party.
Yeah.
And how the D&D statement is do not split the party.
Correct.
And so the thing is I think sometimes
stop them from doing it. Just try.
I think that in some games, the reason you say don't split the party is that it puts everybody in a difficult spot, because if the rogue decides to go off on their own, the DM then has to either pull punches or kill the rogue in a lot of scenarios, where he walks into the trap.
That's the rogue's fault.
And so there's
as the person who walked away from the group and died, that was my fault.
Yeah.
My bad.
And that I think is why people talk about it is as like sort of a rule that both DMs and players agree to, is like, don't split the party, is because that's not a fun scenario to end up being in, where the DM's like, man, I had a trap here. This trap is going to just straight up murder one character. Do I murder them or does the trap disappear? And so my question is, in what scenarios is don't split the party something that we should follow? And when do we start making exceptions to that rule? Because as we're saying, splitting up, to a party of 6 level 14s into 2 parties of 3 can be great D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the line? What's the definition here?
I'm of the mind, don't split the party as a rule for the players. As players, don't split up. It's a dangerous world out there. It's just like if it was the zombie apocalypse or like a real world situation. If you're in a dangerous place, stick together with safety in numbers. But as a DM, splitting the party, like, fuck yeah, do it. Like, again, you pivot. They don't know.
Pivot. Yep.
They never know when you pivot. unless you're like, I'm gonna do. If you're like quick and you kind of think about things, you can pivot without anyone realizing. And so like, this is a weird example because it wasn't a great episode of TV, but the second D&D episode of Community, where they like fall off the log or down a waterfall or something, and the party gets split. Like a split party, I think is great. I've done split parties before where we had to, because they got so split up, I put them in 2 different rooms and I walked between the rooms, like DMing, and then I'd be like, all right, I'll be right back. Like, that's where we're going to leave things right there. Like, that's the state of the world. I'll be right back. And just like, because then those players are left in a sense of like suspense of like, what are those other idiots doing? Like what are they up to? And then bringing them together, that sense of relief, like, oh fuck, we survived it. Or that sense of like grief that someone didn't survive it. Like, I think as a GM, split the party, man. Do it.
Yeah.
I think too, for players, like I think if it organically makes sense to your character, like resist the urge as a player to be like, I know this is a bad idea. But if it's like you guys have you teleported back because you wanted to take Callie's, her stepbrother back to Wolverine because you found him and we're like, we got to take him back to our home city. So it was like on some level, you knew splitting the party was probably not a great idea. You thought you were in a safe place, but it still doesn't override your character's drive of like, we have to get this kid home. So it's like, I think as a player, like you can have those thoughts, but try not to let that metagaming in of like, I know this is a bad idea as a player. Be open to the idea that like, well, your character is like, this is the best choice at the time. You're not always like, you can be aware of the risk, but yeah.
Well, yeah, like, because like fundamentally Finnan is a scout, like, and there are characters in our party that are not quiet. They are fucking loud. The majority of them are.
Armor class is great.
And so like in saying that, Finnan has to leave the party to scout shit if he wants to do it successfully, because otherwise there's going to be Callie and Neppy behind him going clank, 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 like, like, so yeah, there's times where you just naturally have to leave or like split the party.
I think it's a pace thing too. Just keep the pace driving.
Yeah.
And it, as long as everybody feels like, I love going cliffhanger to cliffhanger. That's my favorite way to do a split party. It's like, oh, but now you think, here we go. Okay, now let's cut back to you. It's like, it's just keep the pace going as long as everybody's having a good time. I have been a part of where it's like, man, we are basically just watching this guy play D&D for about 2.5 hours. And then eventually I got to play. So, it's like, there is a give and take to it, but that's some great storytelling always comes out of it. And be ready to pivot. I absolutely agree.
Well, that is, especially as a player and as a DM, working with especially new players, never split the party, I think is most important. Like yeah, combat, whatever, but most important for role play, because like,
then you have to then tell them what they just heard you say.
I relay that, but to the party. But more often than not, you're gonna come across someone who wants to play as a loner.
Yeah.
And like, fuck off, new person. You play like, we all fuck off. Like, just fuck off. Like,
we're all here to play together. You're coming with us.
Here's the thing.
I don't like my party yet.
Like, yeah, Tim. You're talking about like improv, like yes and. Once you get really good at improv, you don't always have to yes and. Like, that's when you get some, when yes, you can know but or yes but. You can put so many buts there. But like, especially when a party is new, do everything together. Like, find reasons to love each other and be a cohesive party so that you earn your time apart. Because nothing will tear a party apart more than be like, and now we watch fucking Grimgore Shadowblade do his
he's talking to the
thing.
villain. He's working for the villain.
Yeah, and I, Sean Deppner, will sit here for 45 minutes. And I'm upset because I'm not invested in this character or this person yet. The way we invest in each other is by keeping the party together and building trust. And so like, don't fucking split the party until you're like 10 sessions in. And you're like, oh no, I don't want to go, but I have to.
Don't split them until you're gonna miss them.
Reluctantly split the party. Only split the party reluctantly.
I actually I have a question. I don't know if that's against
of course
policy. I had heard of this interesting concept, and I have to say I like it, even though my first taste on it was that I wouldn't like it. I think I might start doing it. But the idea is, I'm never for taking roles away from the player, except maybe this one instance, and that is stealth checks. I like the idea, I've heard now, of having a DM roll your character's stealth checks because you are trying to sneak. You have no idea if you're successful at sneaking or not. And then think of all the tension you get to build as the feet walk toward the table and you're like, oh, they caught me. And then he drops his keys and he reaches down, but he doesn't look at you. You know what I mean? Like think of the storytelling tool that taking just that one roll away from players. They get that creepy thing where you hear the DM roll the dice, you know, you can screw with their minds and look at them and give them a little smile or something, you know, and they have to trust you obviously as a DM, but it's like, I just heard about it recently and I was like, that's fucking brilliant. You think you're hiding. You don't know you got a 3. So you're not going to take the least direct route to get there because you don't know you're caught yet. So I wanted to see what other DMs thought of that because again, I don't like taking roles away.
I love that. Cool. Yeah.
I love it. And can I add another one?
Yeah.
Investigation checks for traps.
Yes.
The answer that the DM says is always you think you found all the traps in the room. Whatever you roll.
Yep.
That is what they say. So not knowing whether or not that's good or bad won't change how the character acts.
Yeah.
Let me throw one more in. Medicine. You think you got the kidney.
I was gonna say insight.
Insight as well.
For like deception checks, essentially, because it's like you feel like you read that person well, this is what you glean from them. Like it's like instead of being like, well, I rolled a 25, so like obviously I learned some shit about that guy.
Yeah, I know.
That is true.
I know he's not lying, or I know he's lying. Yeah.
Narratively, because like it very much could just be like a slippery slope of like all of the roles could very
play
much
your character for you real quick.
So you just sit there. I got this. It's fine.
Like in reality, you never really, you know, when you fail miserably, like on athletics or acrobatics, because you bail. But like on like intuitive stuff, like insight, stealth, stuff like that, you often don't know when you're being bad at it.
Yeah, that's my real life, dude. Like all the people I was like, that guy's all right. Is the dude that stole the money from me.
Yeah, but I think I'd be cautious to like put it in too many and maybe just be like, I like the idea of just doing like stealth and insight as because even with like investigation, you can be. What I love doing when someone rolls a really bad investigation roll is insinuating there is a trap when there isn't one,
right?
Because then that like they'll start, it's like the game of like who's in control, the player or the like character, because they'll be like, wait, like I got a 2 on my investigation, I'm like, yeah, you're pretty sure there's no traps, and they'll be like, well, there's definitely a trap, you motherfucker, like where's the trap, where's the trap? And like they'll start playing stupider because of there not being a trap. So I like giving them the role to investigate and just being like, hey, I get to fuck with you now. I think
the thing is though, is that the game shouldn't run, if you're doing an investigation check, it's not I rolled bad, so I know that I did a bad job for something like that. So your character should not be able to go, I check for traps and then go, I didn't find any traps. I'm going to be super careful because I missed them.
As the party's investigator, I'm going to say, Tim, absolutely. Yeah. Because I don't roll investigation. I give you my +9 and you do with it what you will.
Because if he rolls a 2 and Tim goes, there's a trap there, and there isn't a trap, Letters 100% thinks there's a trap, does not have to metagame, and just goes and tries to deal with the trap that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I would say, like you said, maybe not all medicine checks, but maybe a key one. You know what I mean? Like it's a dynamic, maybe just for like certain moments. The narrative tool of it to me seems like, dude, that's juicy. Like you don't know. Like so now you're a little like shit.
Also, deception would be great because like sometimes you know when you biff a lie, but you're like, I think I lied pretty good, but I don't know how good. Because if you have like expertise in lying, you're like, 37.
Yeah.
They believe I'm their they believe I'm their firstborn son with a haircut.
Like, I will say that with deception, the like knowing when you've biffed a lie is rolling like a 1 to 5. That you as a person realistically would be like, my name is Slurm. And like that, you fuck that. You've rolled a 1 to 5, but that like 10 to 15 zone, maybe that works. Cause like does the NPC roll an insight check, or is there just a flat DC? Like the player at that point, they're like, I might have convinced them. Like I think the mechanics of the game are inbuilt there, whereas like, yeah, I think something like stealth, where it's like, I'm sneaky, and then you look over and they're all looking at you, and you're like, oh, fuck.
No, feet are just
Like,
like sticking out from under the bed. Yeah.
I also have. I'm trying to implement a new rule for like stuff like perception, investigation, all of those checks that one person fails and then the next person tries, where I will be like, who is doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the people that are doing it.
That's the group.
Oh yeah, it's one person,
done.
one person, one time.
That's no, I don't even mind if 3 people roll an investigation check, but they're gonna get in each other's way. So if one person fails that, there's gonna be a part of the room that doesn't get investigated because that one dickhead is being like, oh, I'm moving all of this paper, and like that important piece of paper is getting like shuffled in with the rest. And so like as many people can attempt a perception or investigation or persuasion check, but the more people that fail, the harder it becomes for the other people to succeed.
Yeah.
And so like, but I draw the line at like, you failed that check, and then the next player goes, oh, I would like to try now. Yeah. Like I'm like, no, you had your opportunity.
As a DM where somebody's like there was a bard and a ranger, and the bard was like, and they were just role playing it, and I made them make a deception check. They fucking nailed it. And then the ranger added a lie just in the role play. And I was like, roll a deception check. And they biffed it so hard, and the person went from being like, oh yeah, what? Wait, what the fuck? Like all of a sudden it was like, just jig us up. Because it's just like, everybody's playing it cool, and then this one person just takes it a little too far, and then it just all falls apart.
I was on stage with Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. You weren't? Like, get out of here, guard.
Dude, we were doing fine.
Shut up.
Why did you throw that detail in there?
Yeah. One of the things I love about this idea, Bam, is that one of the things that drives me crazy as a DM and also as a player at a table is, let's say Sean is doing an investigation check, goes in and is like, I'm going to do an investigation check, and rolls a 2. And then another player sees him rolls a 2 and goes, I'm also going to do an investigation check. Having it be like, I'm doing an investigation check, and the DM rolls a dice behind its screen and says, you have checked and there are no traps in this room.
Yeah, Cody looked,
Leave it at that.
Yeah, we love it.
I am always cautious of taking too many dice rolls away from players, because I like to do like wisdom saves for things that they don't know are there. So I'll have all of just their saves. I'll have their save scores behind the screen for me. So if like the gremlin trickster is hiding in the bush and is like trying to mind control one of them, I don't want them to be like, something's trying to mind control me because I keep rolling these wisdom saves. I'll just do it in the background. But I'm always cautious to be like, I'm gonna roll this for you now, and I'm gonna roll this for you now. Like I don't want to end up playing like perching on my chair playing D&D with myself.
Yeah, we all want to roll
I do like the idea of the stealth one, and I also like the idea of like some rolls, like not every narrative
moments.
Like, where it's like, I'm gonna roll that one for you.
Yeah, what's your bonus? Okay.
Yeah.
My question, and this is something that is just baked into D&D. How come wisdom's the best save? How can no one ever do a charisma save? Yeah. I couldn't tell you what failing a charisma save even looks like. Is that just you shit your pants?
It's self-confidence. Charisma save is just like self-assuredness.
Aren't there like lots of mind control-y charisma saves? Or are those wisdom saves as well?
Yeah, I think like fey magic stuff, like fey manipulation, mind manipulation, I think is charisma based.
Fucking baloney. Like,
but wisdom's the best save.
If you're like, oh fuck yeah, I'm a paladin, I have strength and charisma. Oh my, like, what the fuck am I gonna use that for? I hope I fight a bunch of burly elves. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can take? Because everything's wisdom. Everything. There's an occasional intelligence where you're like, yeah, your eyes are deceived. And we love dex and con and strength. All of those make sense. But charisma is the forgotten, unloved.
No, there are charisma saves. Charisma saves are generally about like fear. There are obviously there's a lot of cross.
That's wisdom.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of cross like stuff that applies to wisdom.
Bard
also,
magic.
You'll find similar things like enchantments, like mind controls. You'll find it like examples of those in like monster stat blocks.
But whole person is wisdom.
Whole person's wisdom.
Here's my question. Pitch it to me narratively. I have because I don't know what to do because it's never come up for my players. Someone has failed a charisma save. Oh geez, it's my 4th time playing D&D. I make a charisma save. Oopsie doopsie, I rolled a 6. What happens, DM?
So the
Your
demon
force of
reaches
will
out.
is broken.
Yeah. The demon reaches out and you feel this like creeping sense of self-doubt as your like sense of self starts eroding away as it like grabs into your mind and you feel its claws like embed themselves into your mind as you realize that everything that you thought you were is completely false. Like it's that confidence in your in your like id, your one.
Okay, I love this. Let me take it one step further.
Go for
I
it.
think we should start incorporating in the same way you make wisdom saves in a horror campaign. If you're in a high stakes social situation, charisma
Anxiety
saves.
checks.
Anxiety checks.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Like
We also
fucking-
I do want to point out that Nogrin Frostbeard has pointed out that banish is a charisma save, which I love because you like leave this realm and you go, I'm too motherfucking cool.
No.
I'm gonna stay.
Decided
bitch.
that I will
like, I don't want to.
Oh.
Banish. Oh,
I think,
banish.
yeah, I think that like basically the thing that it comes back to is all of these checks that you're making and charisma and wisdom are essentially all like mental fortitude checks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they can sort of, as the DM chooses to describe, could logically fit into any of the 3 for most of the options.
Yeah.
The way I kind of line it up is they line up with each other. So strength is first, intelligence is first. Like intelligence is mental strength. Like you're like, you've read a lot of books, you've lifted a lot of weights. Like wisdom is mental dexterity. You can think your way around things. You can avoid the like charm. You can dodge it out of the way mentally. And then charisma is constitution. You can hold on to what is you. You can like withstand the buffeting of something external by being like, no, I know what I am. I know who I am. It's like, I can resist the mental poison that is whatever that's happening to you.
See, why isn't that?
I've always attributed them because they're
right?
in the same spot. You just have to move strength, dex, and con down, and they line up with each other.
They match up.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know what failing a charisma saving throw, but I know what passing one looks like. It's that scene in Tombstone when Kurt Russell's by the river and he's like, no, and he just walks out with a shotgun. And, dude, that's a
you call down the
crit
thunder
on your charisma save.
That's one of my favorite movies.
I would say that. I would say like an excellent charisma example of a charisma save might be like a demon speaking in your ear, like in your brain, like some sort of deception.
Yeah.
And having the ability to like parse through that comes through charisma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make the pitch again for anxiety saving throws.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sold.
I think that's great.
I'm sold.
I think if you're the lying rogue and you're fucking going around pretending to be Juliette Frambrosia and like you're killing it, you just have to make a charisma saving throw to be like, do you keep your cool? Just do you keep your cool or are your hands sweaty?
I'm gonna make Callie do that next time there's any kind of diplomatic situation with Kamea.
Yeah. I'm in too deep with my own lie thing where you're like, I am playing like Juliette Frambrosia and like, oh no, like I was just trying to get past the guard and now I'm having dinner with the queen. Fuck. Like, it's like you're like, oh God, and I've said I'm her cousin. Like, oh no, like how deep does this rabbit hole go?
You picked up the wrong fork at dinner. What do you do?
Yeah.
Everybody looks over.
Yeah. You're sitting at the dinner table, you don't understand anything.
This isn't fun anymore. We're not playing a game at this point.
I was like, wait, I want to be a hero. I don't want to be anxious like I am all the fucking time.
This is terrible.
Well, no,
panic attacks.
No, you're right.
Advantage.
No, I like the
dex,
idea of the setting
deception.
based.
I feel like I love charisma saving throws as an idea. They don't get used enough, and I want to make
fight fake creatures.
Awkward.
Fake creatures be messing.
Fake creatures
with
use a lot of charisma stuff.
Well, I find people don't use charisma a lot. I think in general, I think a lot of people, players especially, forget about it. Like, I don't find like a whole lot of like I make a persuasion check or I make a deception check. Usually it's like they'll kind of just go with the flow. Yeah, at least with the people I've played with. Like I've not had a bard in my party, so often it's like they kind of will just take the PCs at face value. I feel like charisma would be like, as dump stat. I can't kill stuff better with charisma.
Right.
I love playing, like, I had a hard time playing Tauren. I had a hard time playing Tauren because he had a 7 charisma. Because I like being able to be like, hey, don't do this. This is dumb. Your course of action is wrong. Do a different thing. And like Tauren would try to do that because he was very wise. He was very sensible. And he'd be like, hey, if you do this, I will murder you. I'm really good at killing. Like, please don't make me kill you. And they'd be like, nah, I'm going to try this anyway. And I was like, fuck. Whereas Finnan can be like, I don't think you should do this. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, all right. Like,
well, as a player, charisma is my favorite stat in both D&D and video games. I don't care about killing stuff better. I want to be able to talk to you more and better.
I think it's strong. It's very strong. Like, and in the world, smart people are ignored all the time, but very charismatic people kind of fuck with whatever they want to do. So
100%.
You know, it works in the fantasy world.
I don't know why, but I like this guy.
Stat.
It's one of the things that I absolutely love about Illithid in D&D is that I find that there's a massive lack of int saves. And having those stuns that are int saves, like everything's fine, and then all of a sudden the DM's like, roll an int save, and you're like, what is happening? No.
But again, I like to attribute that with strength. Like, can you withstand the load, the weight of an Illithid's mind power? Like, can you hold that mental load up?
But no player wants to do that. They want to do a backflip.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to.
I can confirm Kokanee can do a backflip and cannot avoid an Illithid.
How do you guys feel about moving for like skill checks, moving or getting a little fast and loose with which stat applies to a skill check?
I'm for it.
Absolutely.
1,000,000%.
Because that's player ingenuity. If they want to say, hey, I have this character, I have these skills and abilities, can I use them this way to solve this objective? Fuck yeah, you can, dude. Like, that's my favorite stuff in the world. It's like, you're looking at your character and you're coming to me with ideas. Like, let's nurture those.
Yeah. It's like we have a homebrew where it's like religion is most of the time it's wisdom save because or it's a wisdom check because it's like really like the way that these players approach their religion. It's not like like if it's a historical thing, sure, it's intelligence, but if it's like you're praying to your god, like
why does your god care if you're smart?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. I also there's a feat in Pathfinder. Pathfinder has probably like close to 1,000 different feats that you can take because they're like feat trees and it's crazy. But one of the feats was intimidating presence, which was you use your strength instead of your charisma, which I love. Because if like Gromgar Half-Tusk, who's like 8'2" and has like a fucking scar that's ripped off half his face, is like, move. And the guard looks at him and he's got like a 7 charisma. The guard probably is gonna move because Gromgar Half-Tusk is scary as fuck. Like,
plus somebody's got to stand up for strength. It's only got one skill. It's got one skill, and it's like you can use strength to do a lot of stuff. You know, it's like.
And why do none of them line up with Constitution?
Yeah. So strange. They're just like, poisons. It's like, everybody's not poisoning each other all the time.
There should be a culinary skill check where it's like, if you eat this, you will shit blood unless you pass the skill.
Try to fight a dragon shitting blood. I dare you.
I would love your opinion on this because I have a friend, I'm running a game with Adam and Cody in it right now. And one of the characters is exploring into becoming a chef. That's one of the things they're doing right now. What check is that for whether or not they cooked food good?
Yeah, it's like you want to say survival, but it's like that's such a weird stretch, you know?
Yeah, I can go right now and make some delicious food and I can't pitch a tent.
I honestly think it's if you're baking, it's intelligence because baking is all about formula, it's all about like measuring, and if you're cooking, it's wisdom because it's all about like
the dynamic
figuring out what goes together.
Is a tool check, right? Is the way they frame it in the game. It's just like an arbitrary tool check. Yeah,
but for the tool check, you need to add a modifier. Like
you have a proficiency if you can use.
Matt, let's dig into this because you're like, oh, this player is interested in exploring it. What Adam's saying is like, is it baking? Is it what's that thing where you like fry it up in front of people? Like
hibachi.
a charisma-based.
That would be
chef.
charisma, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like how
All
are
for
they
show.
cooking it is my question.
Yeah.
Because if they're a baker, that's
Charisma
not
and
good.
dexterity, because
And
you're not going to be
dexterity,
good. Yeah,
yeah.
you're not going to like. You can be charismatic as fuck, but if you're
Yeah.
throwing an egg at someone's face, you got to be dexterous as well. Like,
Yeah.
Or is it like a barbecue master? Like, is it like
Yes.
straight up like wisdom and strength?
Wisdom.
Like just like fucking
Just-
hauling pigs.
Guys, who knew cooking would be so
Fucking
complicated?
giant spit.
Yeah.
I think you come up with your own stat, which is just your cooking stat,
Cooking
and it's
stat.
like you got strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, cooking.
I like
and-
mini games a lot. I don't know about you guys. Like, I love incorporating a mini game and like a cooking mini game. You know, what Monster Hunter does is kind of a fun little cooking mini game in it that was interesting at least. But it's like I think that's where I think it's like that's ripe for some fun mini game stuff. You get modifications based on the rareness of the ingredient and
freshness
that
of it. Yeah.
Let me give you a little peek behind the screen because we're coming up to like 750 followers on something, and we're gonna do a battle of the bards, which I'm DMing. And I've said, you know what sucks? Everyone just rolling a performance check. So I can tell you this: we're effectively not going to be playing D&D for the Battle of the Bards because it's not a fight battle. It's people are performing, and I've just created my own mini game that I'm like play testing and trying to crunch the numbers to make it balanced.
Yes.
We're just like, because it's not just I rolled a 6 on the D20.
That's it. Yeah,
because like
we did a Scott Pilgrim. They took mushrooms, and our bard went supernova with his ability to maintain the high, and so he had like a Scott Pilgrim style battle with this old woman, and I was like, I don't care about what the dice say. Tell me what magic shit you do, and I'm gonna have her do magic shit back.
That's why Jack of all trades is what's the one that like you can't roll under? Oh, reliable talent.
Reliable talent.
My reliable talent's so good. Is like this is a little vain of me to say, but I would like to think that I have reliable talent in singing. Like I'll sing. It'll always be above a 10. Like it's always going to be above a 10. Like I'm never going to roll a natural 1 on singing just because like I've spent so much time doing it. Yeah. That it's just like it's hard for me to just be like singing unless I'm trying to roll a natural 1. Like
Yet won't just sing on our.
It would have been way better if that was like that was your example of trying really hard. And then all of us just have to sit here and
reliable talent.
Clearly told you.
Just once
above a 10.
That's at least an 11 for sure.
Yeah.
Just because Sean mentioned it, we are at 740 something followers, and if you can get to 750, that's when we will start planning to put out the Bard one shot. So if you're interested in that, we can do that.
We'll start if it happens tonight. We start it right now, boys. Hope you're all ready. You brought your bards.
No, I will play a bard.
Oh, I've got the storyteller.
Will they sing?
Working on.
I've got it. I have multiple bards ready at any time.
Can we just talk about how I think bard might be my favorite class, just because they're like, what's your bardic inspiration? You tell me. Like the fact that they leave it so like you're like storyteller bard. I'm like, I haven't even heard of that, and that's a person I've seen as a literal bard. Like, of course that. What is your favorite bard that you've ever played with, had in your party, or personally have been? Like, I fucking love bard stories.
Bards are so amazing.
I will say, Matthew, being the player terrorist that he is, did play a bard who was a painter, and he refused to take part in any fight and would just paint the scene and then be like, look at how good you guys look. And that was the inspiration. Pompadour da Vinci. Like that was such a good bard because he just was like there.
We could always count on him to do absolutely nothing.
Pompadour da Vinci was an outstanding bard.
I think you did only 1 point of damage because I think maybe Adam forced you to.
I killed a guy.
No. Someone ripped his painting, so he punched him to death.
Right. It is.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, favorite bard, Pompadour da Vinci, excellent. Never did anything bardy. Was just a painter.
I played for my birthday. I played a bard by the name of Guy de Fier, who was a bard of the culinary school, and he would inspire people by flicking food into their mouth. He was essentially like a hibachi cook, where he'd be like, eggs de Dijon, and he would like get over and be like,
that's all charisma cooking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
How do you plate it? That's the you go ahead.
That's the payoff. I was like, well, yeah, not to plug my show, which is Weednd and D&D Tuesdays on the
Please plug your show.
Please
no,
plug
You
it.
just interrupted him plugging himself.
But yeah,
all over again. He cut you off.
No,
Do it again.
yeah,
Plug again.
Screw it. That was just a joke. I don't want to do it now. I feel like a whore. But again, not to plug the show, but my favorite bard, I would have to say, is Divot. Like Divot, Gus, the guy that plays Divot, is an awesome, passionate, charismatic, life-living man, and his character had that same zest. He was he never found a mushroom he didn't like, and he was always, just was a fun version of a character that a lot of people played. But then he rode too close to the sun. He died, found out like how cold and lonely death was. And then like his whole dynamic has changed. And so it's like watching that evolution. I may relate to it a little more than I'd care to say, but it's like that, to watch that kind of just like, okay, is he going to be the stock bard that just like parties everywhere, which is great character to play. But then watching him like all of a sudden this switch, like, oh shit, I'm mortal, I can die. How do I become immortal to thus actually live the way I want? And again, it's just like that kind of evolution is just like, dude, that came all from him. Like I, as the DM, never could have sat down and written that out for the character we started with. He came to me with it, and I was like, bro, this is amazing. So
I feel like that would be like watching Mick Jagger become Edgar Allan Poe, where he's just like, everything sucks. Like the world is a lie.
I wanted to ask you something about Divot, because you mentioned that he's a revenant now.
Yes.
Was that something that you like proposed to the player, or was it something that you did he propose it to you, or was it something that
he came to me when they fought a Medusa. He got turned to stone, and so rather than, I guess in 5e you don't really die, you just are stone. I didn't know that. So he died, and so but it was like he got brought back so soon that he was just kind of floating in a void of nothingness, and that screwed with his head. So he was like, well, I want that to affect me. Like I want to kind of have that screw with my mind a little bit. And then as kind of the campaign continued down its darker course, as campaigns are wont to do, he suddenly was like, is there a way, and then he met death, and he was like, is there a way like that I could like be closer to death, or like, and so he came to me. I found the Revenant template for him. He knew what he wanted. He wanted to be kind of not dead, but not alive. And I was like, well, Revenant is a good thing. I mean, we'll have a mission for you. And then it's again, for me, it kind of a perfect escape to be able to be like a sense of permanency with his character. He can't really die until he does this thing. So I can start writing what happens after he, that thing gets done for his character.
That's rad.
I'm going to give credit first because it's a really good joke. It's Brenna Folger in the comments, and she said, would you say
Divot plays Brunor.
Would you say Divot got stoned?
Yes. The Folger, I have to shout her out. She actually plays Brunor, the Sea Serpent. It used to be the Sea Serpent, and then she told me that she just wanted it where everybody had gotten it wrong the whole time, and her last name was actually just the Sea Serpent. And so
that's so good.
Brilliant comedian, wonderful human being. Thank you so much.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that's Team D&D.
Yeah, dude. Shout out. So as we kind of get close to the end here, firstly, I know that we made a joke of it earlier, but like legitimately, Bam, can you please plug where people can find you?
Yeah, totally. So we are Arthardstudios. It's all one word across all the social medias. Arthardstudios. We do D&D every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on our Twitch channel. We then do the 420 re-up on Friday, where the session from Tuesday we upload to our YouTube channel at Friday at 420. That's it for now. We're about to start our podcast format's coming out pretty soon, just because a lot of people have asked for it. So we're going to do that so people can kind of catch up. But man, I highly encourage you. I know the idea of Weednd, if you're not like a weed smoker, or the combination, it might be a little off-putting. I just encourage everybody to come check it out, because it's like, it really is. It's bigger than any of the ideas or thoughts. It's a little magical thing that we've got, and I'm absolutely madly in love with it. So just check it out, man. I mean, our juice might not be your squeeze, but so far most people.
It is awesome. As someone who stumbled upon it, I immediately brought it to the group and was like, you have to watch this. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much.
The commitment to the storytelling is it's perfect.
And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, Bam. It's been you've been an awesome guest. Thank you so much for coming on. As a final question, I'll ask you, Bam. I think this is going to be our kind of recurring thing where we ask our guests this question. What is a moment or some moments in games that you've run that have affected you the most?
Ooh, okay. In games that I've ran, specifically DMing, it was it's with this group. It was early. It was before we started doing the show, when we were just kind of playing D&D together. Some of my players are completely new to D&D, and so we were playing, and I was aware as a DM. It's funny because Brenna, if she's still here, this is about her. I, as a D&D player, know the gambit of the world that I'm going to be dealing with. And I had set up a circumstance where there was this child at risk, and he could or could not be saved. We had talked in our session 0 and everything about themes that were comfortable. There was really no, it wasn't like I was introducing something that I knew was going to affect anybody. But it played the wrong way. It went bad. The child unfortunately passed away. I tried to deal with it in a very beautiful manner. And Brenna had a beautiful, real emotional reaction in the moment that it happened. And it really wasn't like a big thing. It wasn't like she was in tears and inconsolable or anything. She cried a little and connected to the moment. But I realized then that it's like, it is imperative as a DM to realize the new players have no idea what the boundaries of this game are yet. And so be careful every time. Like, I feel like I did. Like, this isn't a failure of mine. It's just something that I think, as soon as you asked me the question, it's the first thing I thought of. I was like, all DMs should know that it's like, we as players know where we can go and where we can't, but new players, they don't know where their imagination's allowed to go, how far it can go, and you never really know what you're going to touch on, that's inside of an individual person. So while I think D&D is a beautiful thing because of its ability to resonate so emotionally with us at our core, because of this root in this ancient storytelling tradition that we all do, and it's like, myth is how we learn what's right and wrong. So I that's the only thing I would say is, like, it's nice to have an emotional response in your game. Know that there is a responsibility that comes with that power. Do not do so just to get. Don't just try to make somebody cry. You know what I mean? Like, basically, I guess is the long version of that. But I think about it all the time now, and how I present challenges to people. Now, it's like, terrible things will happen and people will cry, but it's like, I think it's important to know that it's like, all right, I'm doing this, and I have to, if I don't have a reason behind it, if I'm just doing it to kind of hurt somebody a little bit, or to make my story seem real, or, whatever. That's it. I would say with great power comes with great responsibility. It's like, definitely do it. Engage emotionally with your players, but respect their emotions. First and foremost.
It's incredible you said that, because someone commented as you said that, with great RP comes great responsibility. So it's hilarious that lined up. But again, thank you so much for coming on, Bam. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of y'all out on the internet watching this and following along. We are 4 followers away from all Bard Party.
Come on, Arthardstudios people. If you haven't followed BlackwaterDnD, get them up.
Tell your friends, tell your cousins, tell your dads, bring them over. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been Behind the Screen. It's been a pleasure as always. And
we do a lighters up on my show
next time.
We just hit 750.
Oh,
boom! With that, we will bid you adieu. I have a bottle.